he immediately goes to the floor.
Noe Nino de Rivera is in ICU with brain damage.
He hit in the front of the head.
Adam Loewy is representing the de Rivera family after a fight allegedly involving Noe's girlfriend at Cedar Creek High School Wednesday morning.
He was breaking up a fight when these officers literally came up to him and tased him.
We receive a call that two females are fighting in the hallway.
Sissy Jones with the Bastrop County Sheriff's Office.
Two resource officers that are deputies here for the Sheriff's Office, and they find two girls that have already been separated.
We know what happened. There is cell phone video.
We do have video of the incident. He's being aggressive. He's not complying with any of the verbal orders.
He was not being aggressive. He was standing there.
One of the officers puts his hand on De Rivera's chest and says, "You need to back up." And at that point, that's when De Rivera hits the officer's hand.
Totally false, a complete lie.
That's whenever one of our officers attempts to go in physically with his hands and arrest him. And Mr. De Rivera began to resist.
You see the back of the officers come up and you see Noe facing them, and then you see the taser go. It is horrible to watch it, and it is without question excessive force.
Our officers acted according to their training.
They will have to answer in court for what they're doing. We are just praying that he's going to make it. That is a real question right now. That is how serious this currently is.
We feel for the family, and we hurt for them. We do.
What's just disgusting to me is that this county, Bastrop, and the school and the police department have never reached out to this family.
They have a lawyer. We're not allowed to contact the family. He was resisting. He was interfering with public duties, and he also assaulted the police officer. He is 17, so if we move forward with these charges, he could be placed in our jail.
Those charges are a joke, and I really hope they try to indict a kid who's in a coma.
Well, Terry, that student, a 17-year-old boy, is in a hospital right now, but it all started here at Cedar Creek High School on Wednesday when two girls started fighting.
It was these two girls that were fighting, and I guess the boyfriend broke it up, and the cops went after the boyfriend.
This senior at Cedar Creek High School asked us not to show his face.
And while the boy was resisting, that's when they, I guess, one put out a baton, and the other one put out a taser and tased him.
According to the Bastrop County Sheriff's Office, a fight broke out in the hallway between two girls Wednesday afternoon, and two sheriff's deputies, Randy McMillan and Timothy Stallcup, acting as school resource officers, tried to break it up. Investigators say 17-year-old Noe Nino de Rivera tried to interfere, and McMillan tasered the teen.
At first, I didn't really get it because I thought people were playing, but then when I really heard it happen, then I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Noe Nino de Rivera's family tells us he fell, hit his head, and has undergone at least one surgery. They also tell us he is in a coma.
All right, and we're going to show you some exclusive photos here that the family has given us through their lawyer, attorney Adam Loewy, who is in studio with us, and he takes on a lot of these high-profile police shooting cases where they shoot people on the back, you name it, here in Central Texas. And it's not my job and my goal to just sit here and demonize police. When police do good things, we point it out. But I am sick of seeing police use too much force and then whitewash it. Because the latest thing is they're saying that this poor young man, De Rivera, might have already had a brain problem when there's no evidence of that. I mean, it is insane. And that reminds me of a lot of the other cases we've seen where they then claim heart trouble and things like that when they've obviously beaten someone's head in, like the Kelly Thomas case. And the jury bought that and said, doesn't matter, you beat him for 20 minutes and he crushed his larynx and beat his skull in and broke his nose and broke other bones and as he begged for daddy in a pool of blood. No, he might have had a heart problem. Maybe an Easter bunny too, was involved. So really, really scary to know that the police will shoot you or taser you at the drop of a hat and kill you in many cases. And then the grand juries will no-bill it, nothing will happen. If the police are above the law, we're in deep trouble. And they just had demonstrations last week out in Los Angeles about the Kelly Thomas verdict, finding the two police officers that looked like thugs out of Central Casting not guilty. The police then arrested the peaceful demonstration and laughed and said, we're above the law. We're going to beat your brains out, reportedly, when we get you to the police station, though they didn't do that. So it's really becoming a thug culture. Who have you known in your life that thinks they're above the law and gets on an arrogant power trip? It's happened to all of us in business, with employees, with bosses, with anybody. Some of you may have had a spouse that was like that. Well, imagine bad guys getting badges and guns with a corrupt government that wants an authoritarian, autocratic mindset and atmosphere, giving them the green light to do whatever they want. Remember in Miami where they shoot the woman with the rubber bullets and she's bleeding everywhere for no reason at a peaceful demonstration? And then the police chief says, "Great job shooting that woman in the face." And they all laugh about it. But if you shot the cop in the face with a rubber bullet, they'd kill you. And it'd be, "Our poor officer was shot and bloodied." Again, or don't blow bubbles at a peace demonstration, because if it touches me, I'm going to arrest you for detergent in my eye. They're important. You're not. When they shoot your dog, it's no big deal, including a Chihuahua or a Labrador. But then when a police dog gets killed, they have parades and shut down Houston. It's this idea that government's good, Congress is good, they're all above the law, the big bankers are tax exempt, but we the people, well, we have no rights. We're dirt. And so joining us to break all this down is his lawyer in this case out of Bastrop, Texas. And dovetailing in with all of this is the Washington Post today, reporting on the militarization of police and how scary and dangerous it is and the abuses. So even mainstream media and the normally establishment groveling Washington Post and Wall Street Journal and New York Times are saying this is a dangerous phenomenon. Folks, I would love to support the police, but the culture is becoming very dangerous and very gangsterish, very mob psychology under Homeland Security. It's happening worldwide, the militarization. And we all know the police are bad in North Korea. We all know the police are bad in Mexico. So people shouldn't act like it's weird for us to try to warn people about what's happening. Look at this young man, and we now have the video that the establishment, the public servants fought, the authorities fought to never release, of him doing nothing, standing there, contradicting the official story. We're going to play that video. If you're a TV viewer, most of your radio listeners, it's all posted up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com right now. But the attorney for Noe de Rivera is with us. And, of course, that's Adam Loewy with the law firm, Loewy Law Firm, helping injured Texans. And we're talking about the tasing case of Noe Nino de Rivera that happened back on November 20th, 2013. He's going to give us an update, tell us exactly what happened and where this is going. But again, this story, though a local story, is a microcosm that we hear about all over the nation of kids being tasered and falling down and becoming brain damaged or dying. This is an incredibly serious situation. Thank you for coming in today. I know you're busy.
Thanks, Alex. Good to be here.
Well, you've got the floor. Tell us what happened here and why this is so serious. And it seems like it's becoming an epidemic.
Well, it's one of the worst displays of excessive force I've seen in handling these cases for 10 years. What you have in this case is two young women, students in a high school hallway. They were about to get into a fight. Noe broke up the fight. He was holding one of the young ladies back. You can see that clearly on the videotape we obtained. He calms down the fight. He does what we want our young men to do when they see a fight between two young women. Break it up. The fight is calmed down. Everything is just going according to plan in the hallway. People are walking back and forth. And then you see these two police officers walk up. They walk up behind him. Noe is just standing there. They move him to the wall of the hallway. And in a matter of about 5 seconds, move him to the center of the hallway. This officer, Randy McMillan, has his taser out. He tases Noe. Noe clearly was not fighting them. He had no weapon. He was not being aggressive. Noe gets tased, goes unconscious, and literally, and you can see it in the video, goes straight back and hits his head, square on the concrete. He is rushed to an Austin hospital, and he is placed in a coma, a medically induced coma, for 52 days, almost 2 months. He was unconscious in a coma.
He had brain surgery?
He had 2 brain surgeries. And so it is the most horrific injury I have seen in 10 years of practicing personal law.
Or was it a serious subdermal hematoma?
Yes. Yes. And by the grace of God and the great medical care at this hospital, he pulled through it, but he is completely different. The road back is going to be a long one, as you know.
We have some photos of that we can put up on screen as well. We just showed the video.
Right. And so it's horrific. And what I find most disturbing is when these shootings occur or taserings occur, the government always comes out and they have a narrative. And in this case, it is no different. They said initially Noe was fighting, and they were trying to control him.
Yeah, that's what I'm sick of, is the lying. It's like the guy they have in the handcuffs in San Francisco who done nothing, and they kill him and then say he attacked them.
Right, and that's what happened here. And so as someone that handles these cases, I was just waiting. I knew there was a video. We had eyewitnesses saying, no, he was not fighting. But you never know until you see this video. And then you see the video, and you're like, wow, he was doing nothing wrong, and he got tased. And I think that it was horrific. I think it needs to be treated as a criminal act.
Well, watching the video, I was about to say, the police officer's in a stance of almost enjoyment when he does it, spreading his legs out, getting in a stance. So it doesn't look like it was an accident. And they've said it wasn't an accident, that he was basically being combative.
Right.
Which isn't true.
100% not true. And
his hands are at his side, they push him over, and they just taser him for fun.
And not only his hands were at his side, when you meet this young man, he is about 5'6", 140 pounds soaking wet. You have two grown adult police officers who are trained.
They look like big guys.
Big guys, especially his partner.
Really tough.
Why don't you just grab him? Why don't you grab him? Why are you tasering him? I mean, I will tell you myself, I could have grabbed this kid and held him. And that's where it gets into this issue of why are teenagers being tased in a high school hallway?
Well, they're using it for control. Police, they've had cases, as you know, where they taser you to make you answer questions or to give a urine sample. And judges say, no, you're allowed to torture, pain compliance. They call it pain compliance, where they break the abortion protesters' arms with nunchucks. You seen that video? And the federal court said, no, that's pain compliance. So this is really what it is. All of America is becoming an Abu Ghraib.
But there is, without question, a militarization of the police force in the United States. And when you have these officers with tasers, tasers are very, very dangerous weapons. Let's be honest.
You're being an extremist. Why didn't they just kill him? Because, I mean, obviously, if you're going to taser him and have him try to kill him, why not just start executing people if their hat's on wrong?
Well, it's going to be curious to see what they say under oath about it. Because what can they say? Are they going to say we felt in danger? Are they going to say that we were being attacked? They can't say that. And so what you're hearing now is he disobeyed orders. What orders could he have possibly disobeyed in a span of 3 to 5 seconds that justified being tased like this? I think it's a horrific display of excessive.
I want to skip this network break. This is so important. Art Aceveda, back in, I think it was like July of last year. I'm going to get him back on soon. He says he's coming in. He was on the local 590 with Sergeant Sam and those guys here on KLBJ, the station the president formerly owned. And he was openly saying, quote, and I'll never forget it, because they played it later on another show, quote, if a police officer gives you an order, even if it's a wrong order, you follow it and you won't get hurt. Well, they've had cops pull women over that drive out of topless bars and they demand oral sex. Should they do that? If a cop wants me to mow their lawn, should I do that? If they want to bust in my house without a warrant, should I let them? No. All the common law and the courts have said, no, you have a right to resist that. But here's this new doctrine where you see the deaf people all the time, or the autistic, clearly autistic, being attacked because they didn't mind an order. You know, you walk behind a deaf person and say, halt, halt, they don't, so they shoot them or tase them. Or the Chinese guy in New York, you know, where they beat him up for jaywalking because they said stop and he didn't know what that meant behind him. I mean, it's this thing, you didn't follow my order, so I'm going to kill you. How about we all just wear, like the Running Man, a necklace around us with a bomb, where if we don't obey an order, they just detonate it and blows our head off.
I think that's a good point. I think that when you talk about constitutional rights and civil rights, it's real easy for people to say, oh, I like free speech. But where the rubber hits the road is really the Fourth Amendment. And that is the right to be free from excessive force. You are correct. We are not in a militarized country, or we should not be in a militarized country.
We are. We're in an occupied country, though.
Well, that's, you know, that's obviously up for debate.
But what do you say to Art Aceveda in the statement that do what you're told and you won't get hurt? I mean, that sounds like the creed of gangsters and dictators.
I think there's a big problem with certain members of law enforcement that feel that they are the judge, jury, and executioner. There's no question about that. I've seen that in police cases. I've seen cover-ups occur after these things have happened. And I think we're seeing this in this case. Why can't they just be honest and say they made a mistake here? They shouldn't have tased this young man. And I think the fact they won't even admit that, and they put out this nonsense that, oh, he had a prior head injury, is just indicative of a culture that they feel they cannot admit they do wrong.
And then it gets worse statistically. Less police are being killed statistically, but more people are dying at the hands of police because they're all training with instinctive shooting to just start shooting at the drop of a hat, and it's really scary. Now you have the state police doing proctology cavity searches on the side of the highways? I mean, foreigners won't come here in major studies. We're losing $40 billion a year in tourism. USA Today reported a few years ago because people are scared to come here. Just like I won't go to Mexico because of the police, people won't come here now.
I think it's a much bigger problem than people are acknowledging, and it's very easy to sit back and say, oh, that's going to happen to someone else's child or someone else's husband. But this young man comes from a very good family. He has no criminal record. This was that other child, and that could be your child. And I think that it's very important that we talk about these issues and try to make this thing right.
Well, it's just amazing that it's gotten to this point. Break down more of the case, because I followed on the news. I followed you on the news. And them not wanting to release the video at first and saying that he basically resisted them or attacked them. And then, of course, now the video shows they've lied. This is why the police are losing their credibility.
Well, I think that that's a good point. I think that what's interesting to me is right before the video came out, there was the head of a state police union named Kevin Lawrence that went on the local channel here and said, oh, I heard that Noe had some headaches the week before. They started floating this out that he had a brain injury apparently a week before, as if a 17-year-old was wandering around with a brain bleed, and just coincidentally, the day he got tased and was rushed to the hospital, that has nothing to do with the tasing. It's a prior injury. That is obviously completely false. And again, watch the narrative in these cases. When they start talking about these phantom prior injuries or that he reached for a gun that he didn't have in other cases I've handled, that's when you know the police know they've done wrong.
Well, in the case of Kelly Thomas, I'm sure you followed that, just screaming for daddy, begging, and then being tortured to death. It took him, what, 4 days to die in the hospital. And when you look at the photograph, the mugshot of these police officers, I mean, talk about just absolute thug central types. And then you look at the fact that the father of this guy was a retired police officer. He said they got away with murdering my son, and the mother of police is also saying basically the same thing. They claimed, oh, he might have had a heart condition before because his heart was so bruised from the beating and all the rest of it, and his rib cage being rammed in on it. And then they used that, and the jury, cowardly, probably out of fear of the gangsters, then found them not guilty. I mean, that is such a disgraceful jury, and the culture of endorsing whatever the police do is absolutely going to empower our downfall.
And it's always ironic to me that our friends on the right wing are so anti-government. They don't like the government. They're anti-government, limited government. But yet, when the government kills someone, the reflexive reaction is, oh, they did the right thing there. We need to support whatever the police do. That's a paradox there. If you're skeptical of the government, you should be even more skeptical when they kill someone, or in this case, when they seriously hurt someone. And I think it's a real blind spot that most Americans have that must be addressed.
Well, exactly. But what it comes down to, policing is a tough job. I wouldn't want it. And they get burnout, they get PTSD, and it's the culture of, hey, we're going to make mistakes, so stop trying to put us in jail for it, or we can't do this job. And everybody gives the police more leeway, but it's now been abused, and they've now been federalized and globalized and militarized, and they're doing SWAT raids over, unreturned library books in Williamson County, literally. And so, that's not the case. It's been this entitlement, this empowerment. What do you think, as a guy that gets a lot of these high-profile cases all over Texas, where do you think this is going? Because clearly the public's turning against the police. That's just what the social engineers want, because then it's a us against them mentality. How do we reach out to police? How do we reverse this militarization and bring them back to being more honorable peace officers?
Well, I think that it's honestly shows like this. It's discussing this issue. It's having a discussion about it. And then it's really urging the elected officials, specifically district attorneys, to hold these people responsible when they do something like this. When you're looking at Austin, this district attorney here, Rosemary Lindbergh, has never indicted a police officer for killing someone. And I'm not even saying convict them. I'm saying indict them. Let a jury decide if this was a criminal act. When you look at these police shootings, and even in this case, we'll see what happens, but district attorneys will not indict these police officers. And what my point always is, let's put it in front of a criminal jury and let the jury decide. And if they issue not guilty, they issue not guilty. But it's the behind closed doors decisions that are very scary.
Well, there was a CIA section chief, I think his name was carnival, or not, it was about 4 years ago, I forget his name. It'll pop in my head in a minute. In Houston, and they pull him over, they get him out of the car, he's got his hands at his side, and the cops execute him. It's all on chopper. And of course, that was a hit team. They were ordered to kill him. We know he was a real CIA guy. He'd gone rogue or something. They have that in bigger departments. They have federal hit teams. That's come out on record. They clearly execute him. There wasn't even an investigation. So my issue is if the order comes down, I guess, to pull me over and kill me, it won't even matter if it's on video. I could get out naked with no weapon. They'll just say, oh, I had a lightsaber. You know, they'll say I had a particle beam. They'll say I had a bomb. It's this thing of on video, they're killing people, and they always get caught lying, even though they knew they were on video.
Right.
They said that De Rivera, basically resisted and attacked them. He's clearly standing there. He stops the fight. They direct him. He's totally calm. He turns around. They taser him.
Right.
I mean, this is so obvious, and it's the lying. I mean, if they'd have said, well, we thought he was going to do something, so we tasered him, or I accidentally tasered him, or whatever. Or no, it's the lying and then the getting away with it. I mean, I hope they don't get away with it. What should happen? What are you asking for? What's going on with your lawsuit?
Well, we would like the district attorney in Bastrop, and we now have the U.S. attorney for the federal level. We are asking them to do a criminal investigation. And I feel, on behalf of the family, this was a criminal act. I think there should be an indictment.
The lying's a criminal act.
I think there's a lot of things that will come out once we get more into the lawsuit about what happened in the 24 hours after this happened. I am certain that the police tried to control the narrative with the help of the school district. And we will see once we get these emails, once we get the communications, a lot of stuff went on of trying to sell people.
Isn't that a criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice and racketeering?
Without question. It's a deprivation of civil rights. So we will see where that goes. But at this point,
it's a conspiracy to suppress his civil rights.
I think there's no question. I think when you have, and we will see what the evidence shows, but there's a lot of suspicious things that occurred after this incident. I do not believe the school called EMS quickly enough. There was about a 2-hour gap.
Oh, my God.
And we need to know.
2-hour gap.
Right. And there was the plea.
Well, soon they'll just start warehousing the kids till they die. And if they don't, maybe just.
It was a horrific reaction.
Wait a minute. 2 hours they waited?
Right.
There should have been an ambulance there in 10 minutes.
Right. And they had moved him to a nurse's office. And
just hoping he got better.
Right.
What?
As he was bleeding out of his ears.
Oh, my God, this just got 10 times worse.
Right.
Oh, now you've got them literally refusing medical aid. What, did they just hope he died, or what was?
We'll see. It was very bad.
Bleeding from his ears.
Right. It was very bad, and I'm certain that the police tried to control the narrative about what happened very quickly, and we're confident we will be able to show that.
I'm surprised they didn't just take him behind closed doors and claim he got up and attacked him and then, shoot him a couple times.
I've seen that happen in other cases, but thankfully.
Well, why not just put nooses in at the school and they can just hang whoever they want? Because it is an execution center. We'll be right back with attorney Adam Loewy. This is an incredible case, and it could happen to you and cops. It could happen to your kids. It probably will. Noe de Rivera went to school. Some girls were fighting. He broke up the fight nicely. The fight was over. The police come over. They talk to him. They direct him with their hand over and taser him. And he falls over, hits his head. Blood comes out of his ears. They hold him for 2 hours. I guess hoping he'd snap out of it, son. I mean, we just hit you with a cattle prod and you hit your head on the hard concrete floor, boy. Shake it off. Now, this happened to one of those cops. Even by accident, they'd hit by a taser and fallen over. It'd be a big parade and 21-gun salutes because they have value. But I guess De Rivera doesn't have any value. And as I mentioned, even the Washington Post is in the news today saying that we have militarized police. Talking to his lawyer, Adam Loewy. Adam, you were talking about posse comitatus during the break, the militarization. The political establishment wants to convert us to a command and control system. This is RAND Corporation all the way, the domestic stabilization force that they called for in the 80s. This was a plan. What is your take on where this is going, how this is going to unfold? And am I wrong? Is it just that because of YouTube and because of cameras we know about more of this? Or is it getting worse? And tell us about some of your other high-profile cases.
Well, I've seen it get worse in just the 10 years that I've been practicing this kind of law. I think that when you militarize the police and you don't train them properly which I think happens a lot, especially in this situation, you're going to see more and more about this, where there's a mentality among certain police officers that it's a war zone out there. I mean, you've heard them say that. I had a case, it was a high-profile case, that one of the officers talked about boots on the ground in a certain neighborhood. That is a military term. And if they're using that kind of term in policing, you know what the mentality is. So I think that it's going to get worse. I think I've seen it get worse just in the cases I've handled. And again, the biggest problem I have with it, which is, of course, first, the loss of life and this young man being hurt so bad in this case, but it's the lying that occurs afterwards. It is the constant lying by government officials.
And police admit they're trained how to lie on the stand, and the gullible public doesn't even know that.
Right. I think that police, more than anyone, are trained when it comes to criminal cases, for example, to testify in the right way, if you will. They are trained how to testify, and they're very good at testifying because that's what they do. So when something like this occurs, they're very smooth. They're very smooth in how they talk about it. And what's very disturbing to me, and I know you talk a lot about this, is when you talk about media, the mainstream media's main source for most stories is police. It's a lot of criminal stories. It's a lot of stuff that sells. So they have these connections in the police department. And in order to have connections, in order to have Chief Acevedo call you back, you cannot expose them for what they're doing.
Well, I got to be fair to Arte Acevedo. And I know there's always that access issue that's well known. And he does actually come down here, even though I give him pretty hard interviews. But he's unlike a lot of other police chiefs. But I know sometimes when other media does do critical pieces, he doesn't talk to him again. I guess he talks to me because it's part of his outreach or whatever. I mean, he is a slick little devil, isn't he?
He's very slick. He's very good at the media.
He does stuff like they had the deputy mayor say, well, once we register your guns, we are going to confiscate them. And then people push our guys and yell at him, the pro-gun guys. And then when he was interviewed, he goes, well, your guys were cussing. And I went back and looked at the video. Our guys aren't cussing. It's the anti-gun people. My only point is that he really is slick. Because to him, it's just like winning. You know what I mean?
Right.
He'll just throw out whatever BS he has.
No, he's very slick. And I think that the broader issue is, and people need to realize, when they hear stories from the media is getting the stories from the police. They do not want to burn those bridges. So when something like this...
Well, exactly. I'll say instinctively mainstream media just grovels regardless.
Right.
And just takes whatever they say and then even dolls it up. I mean, I've worked in radio, in TV, and I've watched the groveling behind the scenes to people in uniform.
I mean, I sat through where I handled a trial last year where the way the media covered it, even when the evidence was clear in a courtroom, they just kept repeating the party line. The issue in this case was whether a police officer got hit by a car and they opened fire into this car. The evidence was clear that the officer was never hit by a car. Clear as can be. Even the defense lawyer admitted that. But yet the media, from day one, just repeated what the police said. He was hit by a car. He was hit by a car. And it's just this reflexive, oh, if the police say it, it must be true. And that's why this case is so powerful. Because they said initially, no, he was fighting. No, he was fighting. Well, thank God, we have video. And the video doesn't lie. He wasn't fighting.
What about Jackson case?
The Jackson case is a case where...
That's your case, too, isn't it?
Right. And that's a case where there was a bank robbery. The bank was shut down. 6 hours later, Larry Jackson Jr. came to the bank.
They were looking for a white guy, right?
They were looking for
a
white
black guy. Shows up.
Right. And this
must be him.
Charles Kleinert came out. Larry ran, and Kleinert commandeered a civilian vehicle and told this woman, drive, drive. Chased this young man down, saw him under a bridge, went under the bridge with him, and shot him in the back of the head. He subsequently claimed it was an accident. And before Chief Acevedo...
Well, at least that sounds more honest than a lot of times. At least he admitted he shot him. I mean, usually they'd say he pulled out a lightsaber, you know.
Right. And so, but we look at it, this was murder. You know, why has he not been arrested at this point? And so that's going before the grand jury in a few weeks.
And people would say, well, why did this guy run? I mean, I'm getting to the point that the state police said, get out, we're going to stick our fingers in your rear end. I might run. I mean, I don't want to be raped. I mean, I'm starting to, I mean, it is kind of scary now. So people do run. I mean, they're scared.
Well,
look at that woman in D.C. She ran into a checkpoint in a drill with Army, we now learn.
Right.
She ran, barely hit a cone, one of those barrels. They chased her down and killed her.
Right.
Well, she had a reason to run.
Well, and that's on the Noe case, for example, when he's in the nurse's office, there's some claims that he was screaming, crying, and then apologizing. And they've jumped on this, say, oh, you know, look, we were right. Well, first of all, we don't know if he actually was apologizing.
People always beg for their lives.
What would you do if the government has just attacked you and you've sustained a traumatic brain injury? He was scared.
Well, that's what Kelly Thomas does. He goes, I'm sorry, please, whatever you say, Daddy, God, Daddy, Daddy, bam, 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 Daddy, help me, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy.
I mean, you have someone with a bat.
I'm sorry.
Who is coming after you, and, you know.
That'd be like a psychopath torturing some kid to death in a dungeon, and the kid's saying they're sorry, and the psychopath goes, see, you are bad. Here's the pliers. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that these are very scary situations for people, and it goes back to, I think people need to be very skeptical of when the government does this. They are
well, yeah, when people grovel to government, you get Nazi Germany. This isn't the American way. I mean, we had cases out in the Old West where you'd have corrupt sheriffs doing stuff like this, and they'd overthrow them.
Right.
Since when did America become about groveling to government?
I think that one of the big problems in these cases is that police are very protected by immunity laws. It is very difficult to bring a federal civil rights case.
They didn't used to have all this immunity.
Absolutely not, and the immunity gets worse and worse. And what immunity means is they can't be sued. You can't sue your government in a lot of these situations. And when you sue the government, they have about 50 different ways they can get the case kicked out of court. And again, that's the government controlling the game here. And
listen, it's so bad that I haven't told this story yet, and I'm not supposed to. It's about to become a federal case. Maybe I should get you involved. But we have an old piece of property, and like in the 40s, we traded a piece of property on one end that was rural for a piece of property on the road. These people just disregarded it, kind of took it back over. My grandfather kicked the people off. Now their grandson is a sheriff's deputy in East Texas. This is on record and ended up getting caught the second time on tape. Showed up during deer season with guns. It's like 40 acres out of thousands. No, it's 100 acres out of thousands. Pointing guns at people saying, get off the property, it's mine. Total racketeering, total official oppression, civil rights violation. He's been told by a court before not to come on the property and lost in another court case, even though it's been 60 years or something. Been adjudicated multiple times and then did it again and was caught on tape.
right.
And the local sheriff's department will not do anything about their own deputy. These people are literally God.
Above the law. That's how a lot of them think. I mean, a lot of them are very good
Well,
people.
they better hope I'm never there when they're pointing guns at people, because I've had enough.
I think that these fears that people have, people like yourself to talk about it, I think they're very real. I think that it's not just the example.
I will not take my children on our own property now to hunt, because if this guy comes around and literally points guns at people and says leave, comes over fences, drove a police car down gullies that I will not take a four-wheel drive in.
Right.
This is how mentally insane these people are. Literally on a power-mad trip.
And the problem is that even though they can represent the minority of police officers, they are not held to be accountable for what they do. The police will circle the wagons, like in this case, say, oh, he had to do what he had to do. He was being threatened, when he wasn't.
Well, there's another entrance where he'd have to go like 2 miles away to get where he wanted to go. So he drove it through and took it down into a creek bottom. I'm not exaggerating, that you can barely take a Jeep through, and got the police car, the sheriff's car, this is in Freestone County, all the way through and up the gully. Right. And got in no trouble. And then pulled guns on hunters.
Right.
With his family member who's not a cop with a gun.
I get calls from people that tell me similar stories, and when you realize you don't have a case, not saying you don't, but when people, I realize, advise there's no case because of immunity.
No, it's going to go federal. Yeah, we've got a case.
But what's interesting is that what you tell them, or the people, the citizens will say, I'm going to call internal affairs. I mean, internal affairs is not going to do a single thing. You have a problem with the Austin Police Department, you call internal affairs, it's going to go into a file. You'll never hear from them again. I mean, that's how bad it's become, that even when internal affairs does something, we've seen this in some cases I've handled in Austin, the chief doesn't follow what internal affairs wants. The chief's going to make his own decision. And so I think that the problem is one of arrogance. It's one of they feel they can do whatever they want. They will not be held accountable. And what happens is things like this. Innocent, young children get very seriously hurt for the rest of their life.
Well, I'm not a star lawyer like you, but what I've seen in the cases that win, you just show they were acting outside their capacity, that they've lied. You go after the school for not rendering the aid for 2 hours. I mean, you know what to do. Fire torpedoes on every front. You're going to sink them.
Right. Well, it's going to be a tough case, but we're very confident we can prevail.
Are you going to later probably go after the fact they didn't render care?
Absolutely. We've sued the school district as well.
Yeah, I knew that, but I mean, I mean, you got them right there.
Well, it's going to be, like I said, I am certain there were a lot of emails that were sent in the 24 hours after this, a lot of communications.
The cover-up is proof of the crime.
We will get all of that evidence, and we will see what's there.
Now, let me say this about the Austin police. I've been all over the country, and overall, they seem nice and professional, most of them I run into, compared to some of the other cities I've been in, where the police are downright scary.
I totally agree with that.
I mean, the Houston police are downright scary.
And I've handled cases in Chicago, and that's just a different level of policing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the cops there one time, I was filming on the street, and they said, don't do that. And normally I'd argue, and I could tell that these cops were not like wimps, like acting like they were going to hurt me. They were looking at me like these detectives, and they were going to really hurt me.
Right.
And they were looking at me. They go, listen, don't do it again. And they didn't say anything else. They were like, I could tell that they were criminals.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
And that's, I do feel that about the Austin police. I think overall, compared to other departments, they're good. But when things happen that are bad, they have an inability to admit they did wrong, and that's the problem. And
they've got Mr. Slick. I mean, he is unbelievable.
He's very good. He's very good, and that's what the city council wants. They put it all on his hands to go talk to the media and schmooze the media and sell the public on a certain narrative. And so that'll be curious what happens on this.
Well, I mean, here's the deal. I don't want the police killing my kids sometime if they mouth off. I mean, it's scary.
And that's a good point. You know, when you put police officers in a high school, it's high school. Things are going to happen in the halls of a high school, such as a fight between two girls.
I mean, I got in fights with my coaches and stuff where they, you know, and then they were so macho, you know, they wouldn't like press charges on me because they grabbed me and then I elbowed them, so they punched me in the head, and then I punched them. My dad didn't go after them because I had a big black eye from the coach.
Right.
I mean, it's just disgusting. It's I would have been killed probably.
And that's the scary thing. We're not talking that this case occurred on the dark streets at 3 a.m. This was in a well-lit high school hallway at 10:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. It's high school. Why are you tasing a child?
Well, De Rivera did a good job. Pulled the girl off. You see his body language? The cops put their hand on him, pushed him over here, and they just kill him. They tried to kill him.
Right. And trust me, it was a life or death situation for a while after this occurred. I mean, he was very close to death, and he's going to have to deal with the traumatic brain injury the rest of his life. For what? For what? It's completely unjustified in every regard.
Well, I mean, do the police want their kids being treated like this? That's the golden rule. Treat people like you want to be treated. You want to have a macho, tough guy position like a cop. Don't be scared, literally wetting yourself, or like an attack dog, ready to attack everybody out there.
Right.
I mean, you'll be like an American bulldog that's not aggressive, it's not mean unless you attack it, then it's vicious. You need to be manly like Matt Dillon and not just go around attacking innocent people. You're supposed to fight real thugs. But instead, most police I know, take Travis County, they're completely scared of like the real motorcycle gangs, the real drug dealers,
right?
The banditos. The police don't dare mess with banditos. I mean, it's pathetic, but they'll kill little kids.
Well, I think that it's a very big problem. And the truth of the matter is most officers go through their career, never pull a taser. They never pull their gun. It's when it happens and then they kill someone who is innocent or seriously hurt someone who's innocent and then start lying about what happened. And then you're right, rally around this. Will we protect and serve? We're good people. You need to support us. It's like, look, I support the police, but just like in any industry, if you do wrong, you should be held accountable. And that's the big problem here.
Well, it will be their undoing, and the whole authoritarian regime's arrogance, because they're just where the rubber meets the road. The establishment wants this attitude, and police should realize this is going to discredit them. They've got to stop this, or they'll become like police in third world countries who are the plague. Listen, Attorney Adam Loewy, thank you so much. Plug your website for folks that want to learn more.
My website's loewyfirm.com, L-O-E-W-Y firm.com, and I handle these civil rights cases and personal injury cases.
Thanks for coming in, buddy.
Thank you.
Have you ever been threatened over what you do?
No, but I'm careful.
All right, buddy, take care.
Thanks.
All right, thank you so much.